There is one item that we've ordered. It's stuck on a boat in the Pacific Ocean. It's on its way. It's coming. They keep pushing delivery back. We're not going to allow it to hold up the opening of the playground. What we're going to do is that area, it's kind of in the corner of the playground. We'll install an additional fence to come around the area. And the item that's missing is I didn't bring a picture of it, but it's the big water tower. The big water tower slide and the net climbing area. So when we open, you'll see that one of the shade structures currently doesn't have the shade cell up. And that's because they need to install everything under it. Once it's installed, they put the shade cell. But we'll come in and we will put a privacy fence up across that corner of the playground. We'll have our soft opening. We are shooting for April 15th for a soft opening. Because they've been behind a little bit, it's pushed me back a little bit because I can't get in there and do the sod around the outside of the fence, and I can't do all the irrigation yet because they still got a big mountain of dirt. Once that's out of there, we'll come in and we'll put in the irrigation on the outside of the playground. We'll restore that. We'll throw some sod to make it look clean. So for the grand opening, we plan on having everything clean, and that date could be June 1st. It could be July. I'd hate to. He's saying that the vendor's telling them it should arrive in California mid-April. Takes another month to get here, but they keep pushing the date back. So I hate to commit on a date, but we will have a soft opening middle of April. So we're excited. It's going to be good. The artificial turf's going in today. It looks really cool. If you guys got a chance to drive by, it's really starting to come together. Some of the other things that we're going to be spending on, and one of the things we've asked for here is picnic tables. And can you flip over to the picnic table?
Before you leave that, Trevor, I just want to. I've seen some comments recently from public about whether or not this playground is going to be soft enough for kids that fall off of equipment and stuff like that. This is the insulation that's going down, and there's 3 different thicknesses. This is the medium thickness. There's one that's even thicker than that, and then there's another one that's thinner. And then on top of it goes the grass. There's no way.
Yeah, everything
falling
will
off
meet
of a piece of
full playground
equipment is going to get
standards.
hurt on that field. It's pretty amazing. It's how soft it is, and be very comfortable from a standpoint of running around and playing and so forth. The one question I just had is there a pellet that's going in?
That'll be the finished product. There are no
That's the
pellets,
finished product.
no like the old ones where the sports fields, they'll do the sand and rubber and cork and all that stuff because they just take a lot more of a beating, and that's a way for you to come in and keep adding and maintain the surface, but that is the final surface there.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And tables, we're looking at adding tables. Currently, underneath the cabana that's inside the playground, there's 2 really old, outdated, just wooden picnic tables that needed to go. We'd like to put 2 of those tables inside of there, and then also on the outside, there's 3 cabanas on the outside of the fence. One of them just has a regular wooden picnic table, and the other 2 have those dyed concrete pedestals that are old, and there's really no way we can paint those. You paint them and everyone sits on them. That's something you'd have to repaint every quarter. So we'd like to rip out the concrete pedestals, re-pour the floor in concrete, and install these. The concrete tables, they only sit 4. These sit 8. The colors it'll be similar to that. We'll have teal on the top. The seats will more match the playground. They'll be brown, or not brown, they'll be yellow and green. Just give a lot of colors to make them inviting, match the playground. I think it'll really help tie the entire area in. The original package that we'd sent was saying we're going to buy 5 tables. I'd actually like to buy 7 because there are 2 tables, 2 cabanas right across the sidewalk, right next to the splash pad. And so that total for the 7 tables comes up to $27,615, and it's made from the same material that the playground's made of. They have a 30-year warranty on it. So I think it would be a great asset for there. Also, we're going to, if you could go to that trash can, we got 10. Well, that's the dimensions of the table. I guess if you wanted to see the dimensions of the table, they're substantial. And if you wanna go to the trash cans that are out there now are just, they're old, they're beat up. The metal ones from the original ones, half of them are rusted, leaning over, and they've been replaced with just some wooden ones. So we wanted something that would match the playground, again, help tie the whole area in together. And there's the trash cans that are coming, and those are $22,675, and they'll go around the entire playground.
How many trash cans?
10.
Is it easy to get the,
Yeah, so one of the doors will be hinged, so the beach rakers, they come around, they empty all our trash daily, they'll come around, they'll pull the hinge open, grab the can out, and it'll fit the cans that we already have. We just thought it'd really tie the area in, and those items would be paid for out of the contingency fund. We pulled together contingency funds. They didn't want us to release final numbers because finance hasn't had a chance to finalize them yet. So as soon as finance finalizes those numbers, they'll get them. So that's the update where we are on the playground. Some additional items that we're gonna do not through the contingency funds of the playground, but through our repair and maintenance line, is as soon as they get out of the way, we're gonna come in and irrigate everything. We're not gonna irrigate the whole park yet, we're kinda gonna do it in phases. So what we'll do before the grand opening is we'll irrigate from the sidewalk to the playground, all the way around in a circle. We're gonna re-sod the entire area, because we still have a landscape plan that we had drawn up. I don't think we have time to execute the landscape plan, but we'll at least sod everywhere, and then from that point, we'll be able to come in and cut our beds in and install the landscape once we finalize that landscape plan. But at least for the grand opening, everything will be nice, it'll be sodded, it'll be clean. The other areas, and we're working on, we'll have our numbers today, we want to actually paint all the cabanas. Like right now, we have 3 of them that are gray, and we have 4 of them that are pink. I don't know what color they are, it's a weird color. So we'd like to paint all of those. We would like to paint the ones close to the playground, kind of a fun color, kind of loud, bright, kids, birthday parties, and then maybe the ones that are, over by the volleyball, and the ones that are over away, we'll paint them just kind of a neutral color. But we'd like to get that to where just the whole area is just warm and inviting. And then something we'd like to implement too is right now those tables are first come, first served basis. So what happens is you'll get one family, they'll send dad out there at 6 o'clock and post up on one of the cabanas and take that table and do it. We've had great success with our pickleball court reservation system. We'd like to try and implement, not for a fee, but just we think if we gave everybody the ability to reserve 2-hour blocks, it makes the space available to more families, and where families could say, hey, I'm gonna have a birthday party 6 weeks from now, 2 o'clock, and they can show up. And it just keeps people from taking up that space for the day. And I just think it's something better for our community that, and then if somebody wants to charge for it, I guess that's a conversation that can be held down the road. But for right now, I think we do have systems in place where we could very easily set up a QR code. Once everyone figures it out, they'll just go online, hit the QR code, and be able to reserve those areas. I think that would be awesome.
Have you gotten any thought, I know we're not, have you guys given any thought how to enforce that though?
I think for the pickleball courts, it's been really well. You have your signs up that says, permit required or reservation required. And when that next person shows up at 2 o'clock and says, hey, it's my time, I think there might be a little confusion in the beginning until we get the word out to everyone and everyone figures it out. But I think.
You are going to put some signs up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
For the pickleball court, if somebody's 15 minutes late, does the next person come along and take it if they didn't show up?
We haven't had that issue yet. But I imagine if someone's 15 minutes late, they still have the court time for that hour. They could say, hey, this is our court time. We haven't had really the controversy yet. The only controversy we've had is maybe one person booking it in someone else's name and trying to book multiple court times, where we had, you can't book back-to-back times. We've had some little things like that. But for the most part, it's worked extremely well.
I know they run into a little problem over in Atlantic Beach with, and I think the situation was somebody, supposedly if you're 15 minutes late, the next person's going to jump up and take the court. And so I guess my question is, if someone's got it reserved from noon to 2, and and they don't show up until 1, but somebody's already there because it's been sitting there empty for an hour.
Yeah. And I think those are some of the bugs that possibly we work through, but, I don't know, you're in my area and I got the permit. But, no, it'll all be good. Some of the other things we're doing, there's no electricity in the big cabana in the middle. We've ran and installed electricity. We're installing a ceiling fan. We're updating that one in the inside. We've painted the whole ceiling a sky blue, and we're wrapping the beams in the same material that the playground's made out of. So I think that'll be a huge impact. The existing shade structure that's in there, we went ahead and while everything was out of the way, we had it sandblasted and rust prevention put on. We got it all painted, and we also ordered a new sail for the one that was in and existing. So everything in there will be up to speed, looking good. The only other thing we haven't nailed down our numbers on, we're working on it, would be signs, playground rules and playground hours and all that type of stuff. That'll be kind of the next phase that we're working through, get some signs made and some of those areas. Moving down to the Seawalk Pavilion.
Before you go there,
Go
can I
ahead.
ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Can we go back to the tables?
Okay.
You said that you're now wanting 7 tables instead of 5. Can you help me understand exactly what areas you're placing them in?
Yeah.
There's 5 smaller low pavilions that sit to the south side of the,
Yes.
okay.
So those 5, we'll
Those
have
5.
one each. The cabana that's on the playground itself is big enough for 2. So it's those 5
Okay.
plus the 2 there. There's another larger one that already has some really brand new aluminum tables, and they're really long, and that's a lot bigger space. It already has aluminum tables in. And then the one that's all the way over by the volleyball net, we're gonna paint that one. We just felt that the table that was there was adequate. It's just not gonna have the attention that the playground is. And a lot of volleyball people use that as staging and for the volleyball courts and stuff, so.
Well, that one was the one because when I looked at that, it's a wooden table, and it's pretty well
We could-
beaten up.
We can update that one, and maybe that's one that we go with one of those all aluminum kind of picnic tables, unless you guys would prefer the bright, colorful ones. But I think the aluminum one would probably fit better over there. We'll keep these nice, colorful ones that really tie together the kids' station, the kids' areas.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we thought about all of them as
Yeah.
listening for the questions. And then the other question that I have is you were starting to comment about finance not having all their numbers together or something, but where are we with contingency on all of this? Is there remaining contingency to cover all of its costs?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The contingency was 15%. And so we know what the actual contingency number is. It's 15%, and the total was 251,000 was the contingency number.
Okay.
All these fit well within the contingency.
So other items haven't been using that contingency money in any way?
No, so the
So
contingency
this
was,
is the only items that would,
so some of the items that the contingency would include were, we didn't consider the trash cans, at the time of it, the picnic tables, bringing a ceiling fan in there, rehabbing the inside facility. Those are the numbers that the contingency will be going through, but everything else, also there's one more item, to open early. Now the sod crew has to, or the turf crew has to come back and finish, and that was $4,500 additional to open early and to bring them back. So that would be a contingency type item, but we are well under our
so
contingency
if I'm
number.
understanding it correctly, but just rough numbers in my head, we've probably got about $200,000 left in contingency after all these items have been taken care of.
We'd have to put them all in and allow finance to check, but yeah, we have plenty left.
Okay, I just want to get comfortable because if you're asking for our approval, I guess I would want to make sure that we've got adequate contingencies.
We have ample funds to do everything that we'd like to do at the playground. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
And then moving on to Seawalk Pavilion, obviously, the building maintenance team redid the roof recently. they painted the outside of the building. So now that left the band shell, some of the other areas. We did add a few items. I think the quote that you guys had was a 43,000. We did add a couple of the doors that didn't get painted and the main painted. And we added the wrought iron fence across the front, a couple things, and that new total came to $45,358 on the band shell itself. So the numbers, we adjusted the quote. We just got those in today. I hadn't had a chance to send those over, but it's about a $2,000 increase to add the fence and a couple exterior doors that didn't get painted the
Are
first
you
time.
saying the exterior has already been painted?
They're painting it right now. There's a lift out
Okay.
there and they're
It didn't
doing
look-
it now.
It didn't look painted. when
They're
I looked at it.
pressure washing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're out there.
Getting ready to
Yeah,
paint it.
they're out there working on it now. So the number is $2,000 higher than what was in the packet because we added some of those items. And then also we're gonna paint all the ballards and light posts and around City Hall, Latham, and get those all straightened up. We did add a few light poles along the boardwalk. So our prices, I think you guys had a price of $16,000. We've added 10 light poles that are along the seawalk, and so the new total is $19,651, and those dollars will come from the repair and maintenance line. So that's where we got going now, and yeah, we're excited to keep moving forward.
You had mentioned, I don't know, a while ago that it's been rough on the turf at Latham Class because of lack of irrigation and then all the heavy use and stuff. And we were over there at the concert Saturday. And some areas look like completely bare.
They are.
Is that gonna be able to come
So,
back?
so this year has been, all that stuff is really based on weather and it's year to year. We haven't really had to lay more than a couple pallets of sod since I've been here each year. This year has just been astronomical because December, I don't know if you guys remember the weather in December, but we set record highs for December. So that did two things, and also it never rained in December. So one, you have your irrigation system that's shut off from middle of November, carrying it all the way through New Year's. You have record highs, and then with that great weather, we have record turnout to the Deck the Chairs event. Really set the thing back, and then we come into January, and we had two of probably the coldest weather snaps that we've had in a long time. And then right behind the cold snaps, you throw the Donna Marathon, and then you throw the 3-day festival on it. And it's at a place where it's going to need some love. So what we did is last week we fertilized it a second time aggressively, and I'll probably give it another 2 weeks, and we'll fertilize it again. And we'll really see what we have, and that'll give us, if I can't grow it in within 6 weeks, we'll pull the trigger and sod it. So it's something that's an area, I believe in the 2024, 2025, the Latham rebuild does talk about some artificial turf. That's something we'll look at. We just need to make sure logistically we can still allow setup for these events and festivals and not destroy the artificial turf. So that's something that we're working through, and we'll work with the designers when that time comes. But anything that I can't grow in by June 1st, we'll have sodded.
When's the next festival?
Next
week.
Yeah, the big green one.
Spring in the Blues.
The big,
That's next-
April
this
for
weekend.
yeah, 2 weeks from,
2 weeks. Not this weekend, but.
not this weekend, the following weekend. Yeah, that's a really big one. So that's, again, it's like the grass, it just tries to move forward and it gets kicked back. But we're on it, and we'll pull the trigger and get that thing sodded or whatever needs to be done.
Can we go back and talk about the bollards for a second?
Okay?
Where do we stand with the Dix Height effort as it relates to bollards and so forth? At one time, there was some discussion about replacing all of the bollards and so forth, and
It's all part of the plans, and the bid documents are going out next Wednesday, and the bollards are part of that. So it's going along with the bike racks, the trash cans, the seating, and the bollards.
so the question just becomes, does it make sense to spend the money painting everything if we're gonna be getting bollards sometime soon?
But I think the replacement of the bollards in that area is 2 to 3 years out, isn't it?
We're a ways out, it's not gonna be tomorrow. I mean, there's so much, that has to I
3
think,
years?
I don't think it'll take that long, but, you know, the Latham Plaza, there's a whole master plan for that we're gonna talk about, when Parks is done. So those might be done with the park as opposed to the rest of downtown. So I know some of them are tilted and probably dangerous and need to be repaired so nobody gets injured, as opposed to waiting until we are gonna fully replace all of them in the park. So it's gonna kinda happen in phases.
That's really my next question, and if we are gonna move forward with it, you take a look at the existing bollards, there's a number of them that need work before they can be painted. Somebody from an electrician's standpoint needs to get in there and work on them. Some of them are loose, some of them don't have the right heads to them. If you go down on the other side of First Street between the boardwalk and First Street, those light fixtures in there, most of them have lighted heads.
Yeah, they're,
There's one of them that doesn't. I mean, it just seems like somebody's gonna have to go through there and do all of that repair work before we spend the money on.
no, absolutely, we're gonna make every effort to come through and get them all up to standard and make sure they're right before we paint them.
So who's gonna do that part, Trevor?
So we'll get Vanguard Electric to do what needs to be done electrical, they're our contracted electrician. And in-house, if we need to, we're gonna straighten them in-house, they're just sitting on top of a piece of concrete, we'll level them. And whatever repairs need to be made, whether it's Vanguard or we'll get it done.
Oh, God, concrete work.
It's really not concrete work, it's just a concrete pedestal, and concrete work is difficult. But it's just basically a concrete pedestal that the lights mounted to. It's something that you come in here and one guy pushes it over and you tamp the ground around it. Make sure you don't pull the wires out and have a bottom when you stand it up.
So there's cover plates that are sitting loose adjacent to the fixtures and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of those covers that need some care for sure.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure we were coordinated with where we were going in the future versus what we're attempting to do right now. I mean, I don't disagree that they all need to be painted. They're in some pretty sad shape after walking them all, and I appreciate the fact that we've made the effort to get a proposal to move in that direction.
Anything else? Any other questions for Paul? No? Awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, what's next?
All right. Next up, we are gonna move on to the Latham Plaza discussion. I know we've all been anticipating this for a while now. We have Cody, who you're all familiar with here, with Dick's Height.
Come on down.
There you go. Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's fine. I'll just keep it rolling. But yeah, the intention, again, of this is to really refresh our memory. Seems like a lot of this kind of has been worked on for the last several years, and then finally kind of come to some form of consensus, so that way we can begin moving forward on actually getting some concrete plans in place. And looking back as it relates to, you know, Latham Plaza is one of the key objectives council identified for the CRA to really kind of tackle this year. So we want to make sure we keep that in mind as we go through this discussion.
Do you want us to stop you as you're going through it? We have questions, or wait till you get to the end and ask the questions? I'm fine either way.
I think whatever format, I mean, how do you guys want to,
I was gonna say.
you look at me, so.
I would suggest jumping in when you wanna jump in, and at the same time, you know, it'd be nice to kind of get through this too, to be able to talk generally about, I think there's a lot of questions around what lies ahead and what are the next steps. So our hope is that we can catch so everybody has a different level of understanding of this effort, based on sitting in your seats, so.
So if you have a burning question,
If it cannot wait, feel free to jump on in. And you're gonna see, so I framed this very similar to how we went through the site furnishings. Just didn't wanna take anything for granted. And so there's all the packages that have been updated, and as I walk through this, these dates associated with Latham Plaza, it's been 3, 4, 5 years since some of these things have been done. Something to keep in mind.
We've noticed that.
Well, something to keep in mind though is that it wasn't moved forward in the latest phase, because there was so much discussion around whether or not the park should happen first or adjacent
kicked off years ago was that this park is the center point of downtown Jack's Beach and will catalyze and drive a lot of successful development. So there's just been so much conversation. That's why it was tabled kind of later on in the process. So that's where we are today. Go ahead and scroll to it. So today I'm going to cover just really briefly the couple of workshops that we held. So there you go. There's December 5th, 2016 was our first time down here or up here talking about Latham Plaza along with all the other elements that we talked about that night. And then we came back on March 20th for a presentation of like the refined design. And then we worked for the following year putting forth the deliverable which you all have in your hands in front of you today as well. So where we would say next steps are, since it's been 5 to 6 years since this has been touched, we would say that we would want to refine a conceptual design. So one thing to understand is moving forward with Latham Plaza, knowing that it's the most critical place in downtown Jack's Beach, it will be an iterative process where we'll all be closely engaged. So we would say that we're going to back up a little bit and go back through some conceptual design refinement. The plans that you have seen lately are the latest plan. We would say that that is a design concept, but since it's been so much time, we need to evaluate costs, program, and really vet that while keeping in mind that there was a public process where a lot of this really directly came from. So I won't say that we would recommend a sharp turn in another direction, but I think refinement is a really good way to think about it. Then we think about it like a funnel. So we're funneling down to construction, getting this thing built. Schematic design is a refined level of package, so it's another opportunity to really understand the detailed design. And then we get into construction documents. So we go through a phase of 60% construction documents. We refer to that also as design development. We would go through 90%, which 90% is around the time that you start looking to get bid plans out as well as getting things in for permit. So that 100% are really, we're feeling pretty good about how the bids have come in and feeling really good about permitting, and then we build it. So we've actually prepared and sent late last year, we sent a scope associated with what this would look like and carry Latham Plaza forward. So you can kind of just scroll from here on through. So this really, we talked, when we were in here, December 5th, 2016, we talked through a lot of big picture ideas about what makes great public spaces. Once again, the reason why we hit on this at that point was there was no question or no clear answer on whether or not Latham Plaza would precede any of these surrounding developments. We talked a lot about opportunities of what the public realm can bring forth with it and investing in the public realm. And this was a public workshop, so it was a lot of getting people on board and understanding of the importance of all the things that we talked about that night. One of the big things that we touched on is that there was a lot of concern around, there was a master plan done, a downtown vision plan done in 2007, that we weren't going to just completely redo it for the sake of redoing it, but actually we're going to continue that vision forward. And one of the big picture ideas out of that vision was Latham Plaza. So just really try to hit that home so that everybody understood that this was taking steps forward in the right direction rather than backpedaling and doing another completely different vision plan. And so those were some of the slides shared that evening. We did so this was all around discovery and analysis, early on ideas. So we did some analysis of the site. And you'll notice that compared to your document you have, this is actually a little bit of an early on kind of assessment. We put forth big ideas in terms of just strategies building out of that vision plan. And then we began to develop this idea of what the program might be for Latham Plaza. And when that night we presented 2 frameworks, which are similar, but I remember getting really good feedback early on in the process around some very specific details associated with the interactive splash pad, playgrounds. But there was a lot of concern around tent layout and events, so we studied that quite a bit. And then those are photos from that evening. We did an exercise understanding where people lived and then what kind of ideas people wanted to see in each one of these spaces. That was the same night that we had the red dot, green dot exercises, which you all are that night, there was a little bit of a presentation, as well as then later in the evening, the interactive exercises and the red dot, green dots. So that was also the night that we announced the survey, the online survey, and then we came back in March. And so then we came back in March with a refined level of program based on what we heard that night, a refined plan, like a framework plan, essentially, and then ultimately led to, we'll call it a master plan, but really this is at conceptual level, conceptually kind of showing you what the ideas are. But we also came back in March with how we would recommend handling your popular events, power supplies, and the flexibilities of the site itself. There was a lot of concern. Can you back up just one slide real quick? Latham Plaza today is designed perfectly for the events. And so when there's not an event going on, it can seem a little empty with not a lot of activity, but when an event comes in, it's perfect. It's straight, it's linear, the bollards are perfectly spaced, there's power supplies throughout. So there was a concept or a concern that with this refined concept that you would lose that flexibility. So that's what this brought forth. But also with this also shows that you really want to see things going on out there on a day-to-day basis. Like today it would be really great to see a family out there in a splash pad or having a picnic or on the playground.
With this tent layout, where would the bollards or the electrical select?
So we actually showed a couple of ideas. So
I seem to recall that.
typically we would not suggest that they're in a bollard. They could either be subgrade, so in a vault that's lockable, or like in the image on the bottom left, it's actually from a comparable project where they actually put them in the low concrete seat walls so that they're even further disguised. So once again, you don't lose any function, but you also don't walk out there on a typical day and see 60 bollards lining the space. And taking into account maintenance as well, subgrade versus above grade, given this close to the coast is something we'd have to consider. So designed into the plan would be ideal. Thank you. So then hand sketch rendering of that space. There was actually a lot of great conversation around the splash pad. I think that everybody loved it, but people were concerned about it being so close to First Street as well as so close to the ocean, which is why it ended up getting pulled back further away and landed in that spot there. We also started to study the front door and the connection to the city hall as well through a lot of the conversations and trying to address the entire space. So at a conceptual level, can you scroll back just to the imagery really quick? So at a conceptual level, this is something that we would look at confirming as part of the next phase. So these are types of activities, but not necessarily when you look at it, it's like that's exactly what we're going to build. That activated spaces, we talked about splash pads, really cool lighting that can change it from day to night. The naturalized play image is a little extreme, but this idea of creating this kind of dune landscape that kids really start to learn about and interact with. And there's also a desire for it to be really iconic and artful as well. That's almost like reads as a sculpture, but it's a play.
Can you go back to the revised plan? Just one or two, got that. We've had some discussions of possibility of First Avenue having, utilizing the streets for the restaurants and stuff. So we would have to have that be able to be incorporated with the edge of the park.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where you have 6 years later, what have you talked about? And so when we come back and reconcept this, refine a concept, that's a really great example of, well, we've learned this recently, let's figure out how it kind of comes into play. And then also thinking about how the development might come in and shape the space, and do you want to have streets all the way around, or do you want to have development come right up to it, have dining zones associated with the park? That's all things that we were really going to consider.
And I think you hit on an important point. I mean, one of the things that I would think we need to take a look at from a conceptual standpoint is Latham parking lot. We're starting to have some conversations about that becoming a B3 development. And if that is, can we conceptually come up with some concepts as to what serves that, but that the retail has, the restaurants has the ability to kind of spill out into the park a little bit. You really want to take a look at along that whole edge
Yeah.
of the south side of the park as to how that's treated.
Right.
And I think this would be a good time for us to really kind of get a sense as to what could go there on the Latham parking lot. And then with that, use that information to work with the developer and the marketing study that's being hopefully started here sometime soon to determine what really could be put into that parking lot and activate that space much more than it is today.
100% agree. And back then it was, let's do the development first and let the development tell us what the park wants to be. And everywhere throughout the United States, what you see is if they build this that you see on the screen, you're going to have people competing to really come in and fill that space because this is an amazing front door to have onto this park space. So studying all of that associated with the parking lot is a great part of every form of concept process.
You know, how we, as Jeff just said, how we treat First Avenue North, and then even maybe there's something more that we need to do to First Street as it goes through the park itself. But what more can we do to that to make it more pedestrian friendly than it is today?
So then the bottom left image, that was talking around, we were looking at getting some topo to the site, but also creating through naturalized kind of vertical grade adjustments and low seat walls, starting to define park edges. Because right now what's out there is there's the chain link fence that's in the planting, and that's the defined edge, but there's some really fun and artful ways we can do that. And then on the bottom right is the very infamous terraced seating that backs up onto the bike park. So that was conceptualized early on as well. So then that night we presented what you kind of just saw on the screen. Got some feedback. There wasn't a lot of specific feedback on Latham Plaza that evening. I think a lot of the original ideas came out of the original generator of driving program and concepts. It was good. And then that rolled into the documentation phase, which it's really from March. Took us probably 9 months to get the entire document together, get it refined, get it out. So this is all in the document that you have today, which shows the analysis of Latham Plaza in much more detail as we begin to document that. I think currently you would say that all the strengths of Latham Plaza are also some of the challenges, is that it performs so well for those events is that it struggles on the day-to-day interactions with visitors. So that's something that we really kept close in mind as well. And then the refined framework, and then if you keep scrolling down, the concept plan as it stands in its latest state. The tent layout, once again, this was just for the sake of documentation. Taylor, you can scroll through this. You can keep going, please. This is a lot of the same information, just literally as it is in your document. We added some imagery out of the last workshop of what does that shade element look like, what does the artful play element look like. So we added some of those ideas into that. And then within the appendix of the document, I went through and highlighted the survey results as they pertain to Latham Plaza. So there were questions around, do you feel like Latham Plaza is the heart of your downtown? And we looked at see 100% yes when you see that answer, and it's really a mixed bag in the review. And then there's a couple more down that Jacksonville Beach should improve the efforts for tourism to help local businesses. That's actually the whole conversation between what should come first, park or development. Is Latham Park underutilized? The 75% said strongly agree. And then if I had more not just around saying, tell us all the things you want, it's actually building energy into understanding the importance of having some kind of really center stage. We did a cost estimate for the park itself, and then we also did one for the piece that is right in front of City Hall as well. We broke them out into two different numbers. This is definitely something we would want to revisit with the concept. Number one is this still within kind of a desired budget, but then also construction costs have gone up in the past few years, as you know. So we would want to really hone in on that as well. This is not, I mean, this is a premium park in the center of your downtown, so you know the costs are going to be up there. So we want to work through that with you all and really dive in closely.
So these are $2018.
Yeah. So take it, maybe multiply it times 3, 2. When we do high performing public spaces, the costs always, they shock us, let alone something that doesn't really fit. So definitely something we would want to start early on and set a level of expectation and understanding associated with it. So that's where we left off 3.5 years ago. And knowing, like I said, we tabled it, I think, you know, on purpose because there was indecision of whether or not the city wanted to invest in the park early on or wait until some more happenings happened around it. So it's exciting to be here today to hear your thoughts around the next steps. And comfort level of what was prepared to date and the process we went through, and then also understanding how we can continue to work with y'all moving forward.
I'll just say it, I'm ready to move forward. This is exactly what we've been wanting to do, and I've been wanting to do for years.
Yep.
And there's very little that needs to be changed based off of even the two things we talked about. It might be some tree removal and some access points, but it's been the same thing the community's wanted for so long. I just wanna get close and move forward at this point. If you want my opinion, that's it.
I share.
The only thing that I would want to add is the very narrow walkways. While it looks nice and I'm sure people look at it and they're going to be great, like the really iconic places that I go in the parks, they have the really central, one wide. There's vendors out there and they're not crowded in the sidewalk, but you can't have a vendor on the sidewalk and not feel crowded. I mean, you can't. That's not a place of activity. And where all the places I've gone, which are like downtown tourist spots, they're bigger. There's actions happening, not just sitting around picnic. So that's the only thing I see from this is I feel like it's so similar to what we already have, just big open grass.
So our
And adds a lot.
variances won't let us have vendor, like, it's just like a whole, I just never saw this as a vendor type. And we have our festivals and whatnot, and that's, you
I
know
don't
what I
even
mean?
mean like
And
legit.
I see that the outside is usually used to spill in, like a spill in park versus a vendor's park and do park.
So,
You're coming around scale of walkways. It's a good comment because this was pre-COVID.
sure.
We've actually, as a firm, we've learned even within COVID, like, sidewalks could tend to be a little wider because now everybody wants to pass with a good 6-foot distance.
Right.
So we would want to find the balance of what is large enough to accommodate an event and good circulation, but also not sacrificing the scale and the comfort of the daily use for that, you know,
To me, the
giant.
you know that iconic large park in the middle of the historic part of Savannah? Are you familiar with that at all? I mean, it just has
Foresight.
just a gorgeous walkway all the way down to it, and then a water feature. That's, I guess, pretty standard. Man, it just feels like I love walking on it. We have pathways like this all over, and I never walk.
So you're saying like take this one, just make it straight down the middle?
Yeah.
That's what you have out there today.
I mean, if wherever the surfer person is, if that was a water feature and we had more benches like going down a central alley, that would be more in line with what I would do.
Because, other than, you know, where you put tents and stuff like that, having a big green space like that with nothing in it, really, you know, it's not gonna be used as a soccer field or football. People aren't gonna run out there and do athletic activities.
Right.
I never,
Why-
rarely see that.
Well, I think you rarely see it because think what we would try to do here is your family coming here for the splash pad, you got your young teenage son, you're gonna see increased daily activity in this park space if you provide that level of program.
And that's perfect, like, if somebody's coming down these paths on a skateboard, I've gotta step up. You know, and that's what I'm trying to avoid, is I wanna see people coming and going without having to exit the pathway or
I
whatever.
wanna say that those are,
I can't tell exactly how wide it is, but,
I would assume they're probably drawn at 8 feet.
okay.
So they're probably wider than you might think, but I think just recent learnings, we could probably widen that, they're probably gonna wanna be 10, 12 foot at least.
And I'd love to see like benches dotting along the pathway.
Well, so along the south side, that is
Okay.
all one long
Wall.
seat wall, and that's actually where we were saying we could embed the power within that seating element for the powering of the fence. So once again, it's contiguous long edges, so that
Mhm.
what people like to do is congregate on the outer edges,
Right.
sit in shade and comfort,
And people watch.
watch everything that's going on around. So that's try to evolve that around the outer edges. I think the large central lawn, that is largely driven by, you'd have a lot of tents. There was a, you heard that
Yeah.
now there.
The only thing I'd say is that we've talked about multiple times, if that lot, if the parking lot gets developed, if we bring all that other stuff, having them be able to spill into this park, having space to actually put chairs and stuff out, if we can get variances to let them do that. That flexible plaza park, I don't know exactly how big that is, but it would be nice if that flexible plaza park could be big enough to accommodate some kind of
Yeah.
outdoor seating for those who can, like shared outdoor seating from anybody who's on that area to go out there and use, but other than that, I'm gonna go.
I think the southern edge of the park is something we would have to look at through that refined concept phase, because, you know, Gary, your comment about ground level retail, restaurant, being, how that engages the park, we really wanna study that, as well as how big is the parking lot, can you fit a parking garage, recliners, you know, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And do you want a street through there, or do you want it to be right on the park? That's something we want to look at, and transparencies to the park.
We just had that,
Go ahead.
that discussion, you know, in the Sunshine Park, you know, we have cabanas and shade structures. And, including some near the splash pad, because parents don't wanna sit in the hot sun. I know we have, it looks like a shade structure here, but is that gonna function as a place for parents to sit while their kids are in the splash pad? Or do we need to think about cabana or shade structure or both, somewhere around the splash pad?
And onto that point, is anyone considering that you're gonna be in the shadow of City Hall from like 1 o'clock for the rest of the day?
Or not in the winter?
I mean, you're still gonna be, the sun's gonna be over here and you got trees on the shade. Huh?
It's not.
But even the trees are all on the western side of
The
this.
shadow of City Hall never reaches beyond the street.
Right, but all the structures and the landscaping are on the western side of the water thing, so it could, you know.
But that's setting it up kind of per your request of providing some shade for parents, because the brutal sun comes from the west and
Mhm.
south of us. So we wanna put the shade creating elements on that side.
And the,
But the splash pad will, and this is all, these are all things that we would refine as we go through. Do we wanna get seating a little bit closer, are we good with it? Those are things to study. But I think the genesis of how these things are arranged, you know, makes a lot of sense, but definitely more details.
What's in here? What is this number 6?
So that would be a play area. And it's, you know, the intent is that it's not like a fenced off, that's where you go to play. It's sculptural and even kind of naturalized to some regard, so it almost just blends into the park. That you can interact with.
Yeah, you can see the interactive seating concept, or the dynamic seating.
Can someone like refresh my brain, because I thought when we were talking about the amphitheater seating, that was, against the boardwalk and not towards the back, next to the hotel, and here it says it near the hotel. Was I misunderstanding when we were talking about last time as being against the boardwalk, but not against the hotel?
I've not heard that. I know that the terrace seating was tabled just holistically, because until we did this, there wasn't, you know, enough.
I
housing
like it
space.
where it is in these drawings.
Yeah, this is
I'm
where.
okay where it makes sense
there's excitement to move forward with this, then the terrace seating would then be documented with this process moving forward. That way it all comes in cookies.
Because I think the other plan did show, when you say along the boardwalk, I'm
Yeah.
assuming you're talking along the south edge of the park there is where there was a scheme that showed
Yeah,
terrace
and
seating
that's why
along
that made
there.
sense to me.
And, you know, based on what we're maybe going to do with the parking lot, I would think that the terrace seating along that edge wouldn't work as well.
Yeah, we would need to look at it, because you would wanna have transparency that ties out into the park. So this was done thinking that the parking lot, that we wanna hold the edge, because the parking lot's gonna stay in place for a while, and it might be phased in, but it would, I think we could look at that edge.
So
Well, it
creative.
would be, you know, my recommendation that we move forward with taking another step at looking at the conceptual design for this, refining it a little bit, and then taking into account the couple of items that we talked about that should also be brought along with it. First Avenue North and also the Latham parking lot. And just come back with a conceptual plan that we can really dive into and mull over and see whether it's taking us in the right direction or not. And then with that, get some further input, and then we can start moving hopefully forward with, you know, either schematic design or, you know, quickly moving into the development phase.
He had on that first slide with the, we're gonna go take a step back and revisit.
Well,
and
revisit this a little bit and refine it
Right.
a little bit with the comments that we've gotten, that he's gotten
Right.
today. And if there's any other ones, but really just go back and refine that a little bit further. And I think that's something we could probably do fairly quickly, and then turn around and really get into the nitty gritty of the true detail. You know, what is the splash park? What is the shade structures and things to that extent? Now, there is a mention in here about a rain garden. I am not sure where that shows up anywhere, but I'm curious as to what a rain garden is.
So, rain garden is essentially taking rain that lands on like a pavement surface, a hardscape surface, and puts it into a planted area.
Oh, you're just, all right, I see what you're
So,
saying.
and
All
it's
right.
in lieu of it going into a storm pipe and then to a water body.
Okay.
It plants actually treat the stormwater.
I was
So
thinking,
it's,
you know, some kind of
landscape
water.
architects, we make up a lot of words.
You know, and I think the other thing that I'd like to see the park do is lead us in the direction of sustainability also. I mean, the rain garden starts to do that. Can we meet LEED criteria for silver certification or something to that extent by doing something unique with this park? Because if you take a look at the city's priorities, sustainability is one of them. And can this be a feature park that allows us to do something like that?
no carbon concrete, stuff like that.
Solar lighting, accent lighting, and such.
Yeah, that would be, we would love to
I would agree with
dovetail that in, that's great to hear.
I think you know, that would be a step in the right direction for the city overall from a sustainability standpoint.
Right.
Because right now, we really don't do anything.
Solar beams and then concretes and then concrete flows.
So that, for this type of work, there's actually different levels of certification.
They have solar beams.
LEED is really driven by buildings.
You know,
So we could even present some of those or share some other certifications that you all could pursue. We could do LEED all day long on this, because our stuff is always LEED, because we're landscape architects, really LEED comes into where the buildings are. That's where it gets really complex, is when you're building an entire building. But the building to the south, that could be.
I would just say for me, the two most important things, I like the sustainability idea, concept of that, I like that, and I also say making a bleed over park from all sides.
So really
Instead of
focus-
having hard scaped in, a bleed in, so everybody around it can
yeah, engage.
utilize it as long as the city will let them have permits to do so.
And, I mean, this would be a new road, right? It's not
And that was
currently.
supposed to be a new road.
Okay, and if we do that, and we do add I drove, I would get rid of parking spots right in front of City Hall. Just, you don't want cars, kind of parked in the middle of the park.
That's what this concept has, isn't it?
Uh,
Oh,
it
no,
looks
you're
like-
right, it's still there.
Yeah, I wanna say that the area in front of City Hall is really focused on a lot of landscape and some minor hardscape improvements.
That's why I think it'd be weird to have parked cars.
Make a better connection.
Although those parking spaces are heavily used.
But that's what I'm saying, we're adding a bunch right here.
But
So-
see, I don't think that we're gonna be doing a parking lot there, because I think one of the
Well,
P3 is probably gonna be whatever
Yeah.
determines that. I think this is gonna be.
This is existing parking along here right now. It's head-end parking at that location. It's not
This is
parallel.
in the parking lot, the current, right?
Yeah, it's in the
Yeah.
parking lot.
Yeah.
So this
Not
concept,
added.
and this is something we would need to evaluate is, do you want a street along that edge?
I don't.
Or do you want it more like a pedestrian promenade where the building comes and opens up out onto that and then it opens up out onto the park?
I wouldn't want it to be a street.
No, good.
It needs to be pedestrian, it could be a fatter pedestrian sidewalk, like
Yeah.
some people like, have a fatter, that could be a fatter pedestrian walk,
That actually could,
Yeah.
work to your comment as well. Okay.
but still accommodate for tents and open space.
Which then means you don't need this outside sidewalk right here, it's just
Correct.
part of the
Well,
park.
You want to get people out of the cars and have them walk that park. You want them out there walking at night and at other times during the day in particular. The problem we've got right now is with the business people that I've talked to, they still say that it's not, it doesn't feel secure down there. And residents in particular will not go downtown at night. Question is, how do we get foot traffic down there and make it inviting so that people will walk in the park area at night? So that there is that comfort level that, the business folks are specifically looking for to attract people into the downtown area in the evenings.
I don't think that's where we're going to go and play until things are built around it. I think once this parking lot is built up and then this area over here is taken care of, we do some kind of lighting fun, and bring something fun to that big patch of sand spurs right now. That's how that's
And
what
I,
I agree.
and I agree with you, and it's just, let's not put parking along the edge
Why?
of the park.
100%.
Let's limit the people walk along the edge of that park.
I mean, if this becomes a parking garage and this is a promenade and there's tables all along and there's people enjoying,
Yeah.
then this is a walkable everything. That changes everything.
So, great, let's do it.
And according to what the request would ask us, and I say we, so just say yes, that's the next step.
Yeah.
Are you anticipating a wall right along this sidewalk on the edge?
In this concept, yes, but I think based on looking at that edge, we would need to reconsider what that is, and how to provide seating, but maybe a little more transparent.
Well, part of the problem you run into though is, and this is why we don't have bus benches, we have bus stools, and we have armrests in the middle, because you don't wanna have a bunch of people sleeping along this wall. And so you have to come up with now granted, you don't have to worry about the skateboarders, because you can put the little metal plates up there to stop that. But what's to stop, the urban outdoorsmen from sleeping here, day in and day out?
That's gonna be something that we need to talk about moving forward, because this is such an important space, and we need to balance that conversation.
I mean, you can put toadstools all the way down there, and you put them all a foot apart, and, same thing works, people can sit along them, hang out, that kind of stuff. But there's nobody sleeping across it.
There might be an elegant way that we can design it in, we just wouldn't want it to feel intrusive to the daily use. Safety is solved by more people to the space. What you're describing is solved by bringing more people to the space, more consistently, more eyes in the space. So
Well, I mean, safety wasn't, we just had, deck to chairs, safety wasn't an issue at all. That place was always people there. I mean, middle of the night, all the time. I mean, if it's functional
conceptual. We're carrying a number for lighting, we're showing images of the kind of lights that we would probably wanna have. Where you're gonna see that level of detail is when we get into schematic design. So when we come back with a refined concept, it's gonna be a similar level. Just to vet the big picture ideas and then schematics is where we're gonna start to
Well,
see.
yeah, you're gonna go back, you're gonna dovetail the other plans that you put together, whether it's for site furnishings or light racks and all of that, that kind of gets dovetailed into this. I'm not sure who's doing site lighting. I mean, we have a site lighting plan. Is that what, Beaches Energy is working on?
They
So-
got that.
So they're now
We
moving.
still haven't seen. Just know it.
And so they're now working on that, but we, you know, how that dovetails into this, I mean, there needs to be a little coordination there that I don't see happening right now, where whatever Beaches Energy is doing, is it what we really need done for whatever the ultimate design of the park is going to be? And again, it may be that we end up doing something temporary and then come back and modifying it to accommodate the park, but that will be a decision we'll need to make as we move forward with this.
Yeah, I think if it's a green light on Latham Plaza and there's a timeline established, then you just have to make decisions around, do we really wanna go out there and put 5 new bollards in now, or do we wanna wait till Latham Plaza's?
I may have been.
So I think those are some decisions that we can help you all work through.
I may have been misreading, but, you know, the surfer art piece, it shows up in the plan for Latham Plaza, but it also shows up in the plan for the pier. So I'm assuming it's not in both places, it's located in one
I
location.
think the pier is actually the surf thing.
For the beach chair.
Yeah,
Well, it
so
says
it's not-
relocated surfer art, so I don't know,
That's that.
I thought they were.
So that's,
Where is the sculpture?
It's that same sculpture, just moved to a different part of the park.
there was
So
that,
it's not shown.
that actually, I think there might have been a conversation around moving the surfer sculpture to another place within the city, so that's something.
Well, right now it shows up in both plans, and that's why I'm just, you know, we need to decide where it goes. And Peter also talks about the Veterans Memorial, but that's already, I'm assuming we're talking about the same one that was over here on Beach and Second Street, that's been moved down to Oceanfront Park.
Yeah,
So that's,
I think the pier was addressing that it wasn't, the Veterans Memorial wasn't, there was talk about it being moved to the pier.
but will we be saving the logo that's out there also, the tile?
Probably not.
Okay. I don't know, it's,
I think relocating the surfer art, whether it's within the park or somewhere else in the city, is something we could work with. But
Just-
most of, outside of that, everything else I think would be completely. Even the lighting for this park would wanna be iconic in and of itself, so that this park is a standalone, it's the jewel within downtown. Would be tricky.
I agree. What do we,
So what do you
Got
need
any
from
guidance
us?
from this point on, like what do you guys need?
Yeah, so, again, because it's a workshop, so we just have to kind of come to consensus, can't formally vote. But we just want a consensus from you guys for staff to continue to work with Dick's Height to then, like Cody said, kind of take a step back, fine tune these concepts, and then we can start moving this forward with schematic design.
Absolutely.
And I've made notes, and I know Heather is too, of all the input you guys have said. We'll go back and listen to the meeting to make sure we're not missing anything, and then I'll type up a Word document, I'll send it to you guys so you can see it. If I miss something, let me know, and then Cody, I'll send that over to you guys, so it's got everything we discussed.
Curious question. In a utopia world, if you come back with something and we go through those steps, what are we looking at? If we never
I like
add anything
timeline.
else, and if we say yes, great, wonderful, move forward, what are we looking at?
when you
To,
say
to
this,
break ground,
to break ground?
break ground. Is this a 2-year thing, or is this a 6-year thing?
I hope it's not 6 years.
Well, it's already been, so I'm just kind
So,
of,
can I answer this question?
please. Go
Yeah,
for it.
please do.
Talking timelines
I mean,
is
I'm-
always tricky, but you know, you say.
I'm
ideal
saying
worlds.
utopia world, you bring
I
us
mean-
everything and it's all kumbaya and we're just going forward.
I mean, 24 to 30 months to 12 months for design and permitting, 12 to 18 months for construction. And that's, you know,
That's reasonable.
And I wouldn't hold that to
the-
you,
with
no, but just saying.
the elements being stuck out at sea, you know, those kinds of things. But,
Very
I don't know, does that
valid point.
sound realistic to you?
Is there a
Ideal.
thought put into what are we gonna do for the events per year during construction, or is that something that can be worked in?
Which then brings the question of what's already booked out and what year can we stop taking reservations for?
And I think once we're in, and Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, but once we get to more of a schematic concept that's approved, then we can work obviously with Parks, their department that plans out the events, and then kind of start piecing it together to figure out, like you said, what is actually realistic.
Well, I would like to know before that though, at what point do we already have things booked and when are they stop being booked so we can maybe reserve a timeline, no more reservations? So we can say, hey, here's our,
Here's the schedule.
yeah.
We start now, and by this time next year, we're done with design and we're ready to start construction.
But if there's already contracts out there to use that space in 2 years, we have to take all that.
We've got to take a look at that, but I'm
That's what I'm
thinking
saying.
that you go until the end of, deck the chairs,
Yeah.
and then at the end of deck the chairs, you start construction. And that gives you the better time of the year to get the work done that needs to get accomplished. And hopefully you get pretty far along, that maybe you could still hold deck the chairs the following.
See, I would disagree. I would get rid of deck chairs for that, because the winter is when it's not gonna be used as much as the summer. So,
I'm sorry,
versus all the spring, winter stuff, I mean, like for me, if you're looking at the different types of stuff that goes on during winter and spring and summer,
No.
I would think that you would do it before. But like I said, that's why it's really a matter of what are the rules, how far in advance can we reserve our year?
I will go visit
And
our
then-
friends in Parks tomorrow.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
we
just
can
really
find out
how far out. Because if we know when we can start reserving our year, then we can say, okay, here's our timeline, and now we have a bull behind us, and we need to just get this done.
We could also condense, instead of every
Yes.
2 weeks, we could condense them and
Right,
really destroy
right.
that new grass that's about to get laid down.
Right. So,
But
And
with their
turn it into.
timetable with the design, we're not gonna get the design before deck to chairs. So if we talking about postponing deck to chairs, that's another year.
oh no, I was just saying, if it worked out,
Yeah.
I would not be opposed to not doing, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I would wait for them to be done. I'm saying if there was some reason, I just wanted to know when, as soon as we can reserve a year off, it would be great.
And Jim, I know you said a couple meetings ago that we were looking at the P3 partnerships or whatever, like, just
Well,
general concept, like,
that-
would that fall in line with construction timeline too?
Oh, no, that's another question. The agenda for the market study to make all that happen is on your agenda for next Monday. But in terms of getting that done, tracking the developer, I would call it strategic managing the concepts of both. It all works out, but you would probably not have a development and construction in that time frame because there's lots of other pieces and parts to have it
Gotcha.
work. But in terms of what is going to happen and how we integrate it with private development, then yes, that would.
Okay.
And this can also be used as an asset to stimulate whatever private development.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So this drawing still has the terrace seating. Have we scratched that, or are we still looking at that?
We've definitely not scratched it, we just put a hold on it because
Yeah.
the police department just wanted a little more clarification on how high, what the, concept was gonna be. If it is something you guys still wanna obviously keep in it, then when we're working out the details of the new concept, we can add this in and then just make sure we get the details of the police department so we can address safety and.
Cause
If
I
you guys-
think the feedback we got the last time from the police department was, yeah, they could
Once they
make it
realize,
work.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, let's just make sure we have, if we're gonna move forward on this, because I know last time I talked to the chief, he absolutely hated the idea, so if we can get his buy-in on this, then I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
'cause I think they moved beyond that at one point.
That was my recollection too.
Yeah, I think it just took some explaining, because I think terrace seating can be very misinterpreted. You can think of things that are, 12 feet high on the backside or, 6, but once they realized you could see somebody over the back of it, it wasn't that tall, I think that eliminated some of their concerns for safety.
I just,
But
like I
we'll
said,
follow
I
up.
just wanna make sure we're had that
Yeah.
conversation on that.
Yeah, and we also talked about maybe elevating the back a little bit, ramp it up so that there's really not a significant low space behind it.
But
Yeah.
what about if we made it more like an island instead of a wall? I think their big concern was just one high wall.
Right.
So what about,
Because you can't
what
see
about the
behind.
terrace
Well,
was
their
360?
concern was a high wall, their concern also was just a place, because they already have enough problems of anything else on Latham?
Everybody good with staff kind of working with Cody to get something back to you guys?
Yes,
Speedily.
yes, absolutely.
Your entry.
Okay, so we don't have it up on the screen. I'm gonna go look for the concepts on the computer to pull them up. But in the put together stuff I gave you guys, I copied all the peer entry stuff from this book. This was, I know this has kind of been a hot button for us. We've kind of gone back and forth on talking about it. And we figured while our friends from Dick's Hype were here, we would just entertain just some conversation surrounding ideas, vision, issues, etc. And yes, that lovely snippet,
So we really are stuck with 100 spaces,
100%.
and it can't be moved across the street.
Nope. I mean, it is literally in the MOU. It is explicitly spelled out. Has to be between this street, between this street, between
Yeah.
I mean, it's very
Exhibit
detailed.
A and what have you.
Yeah.
So
So-
all that talk about having a parking garage across the street, it basically means it would be extra above 100 spaces. How many spaces are there now? 100, I think
120?
pushing around 140, maybe
Yeah.
120. There are a few extra spaces,
Right.
but not a lot. Just
There's
over 100.
I
And I
counted
take back everything I said like 5 years ago when I like, not that many.
If you include where the pier
I know,
entry
sorry.
is 125, outside the, what's now the fence line for the, I counted 125, and I'm guessing, because it was hard to tell for sure,
Yeah.
or maybe 50 within the construction area of the pier.
Right, we counted them on the like site plan before, and again, it is over 100, but not significantly. I mean, we could lose some
So,
and still be
but you could
consistent with
still
the,
do a local, interlocal agreement with City of Jacksonville, and possibly move it across the street if they're willing to do it.
yeah, that would be something council would have to
So
get,
it's
do
a
with Jacksonville.
possibility, it's a possibility, it's not that we can't do it, it's just, do we wanna go down that road and try to examine that with the city of Jacksonville, if they would allow us to build a deck on the Ritz parking lot and make up the 100 spaces over there? Because right now, our vision plan shows that being residential. And are we going to follow our vision plan, or are we not? You know, that's part of the question we need to answer.
So on that note, can I ask, does it mean we need to give 2 broad concepts to city council and ask city council which one they prefer before we move forward with the concept pieces? Because that's gonna be a big wrinkle in anything. If this one little paragraph you shared with us, I mean, I agree. I think Gary's right, we need to know what city council wants, because if city council wants to pursue seeing if the city of Jacksonville will move 100 spaces across the street, and then we already know what we're doing with that lot then.
Yeah.
And then,
I know the last time, and again, this has been a little while, so there are new people, but the last time it was discussed was in a joint meeting between CRA and council was in 2019. And it was stated that they wanted to put everything on hold until the pier was closer to completion. So that's where everything kind of got halted, as that was ultimately decided. And then also, there was a lot of discussion between, in your thing, you'll see I kind of stapled together pier entry concept 1, concept 2. There was a lot of discussion between these 2 concepts.
we did not like the lifeguard stand.
Right, at that time, the unanimous kind of feeling was for the second one. Now, again, there's a lot of, it's been 2019, it's been a little while ago. But there was also, at that time, those were the only 2 concepts discussed. There was not something discussed going across the road or anything like that. And it was said in that meeting, and Cody, correct me if I'm wrong, the design behind these and the reason they're designed kind of just simple, elevating the green spaces, elevating the parking lot, adding a couple of public art opportunities, additional bike parking. It was to kind of set this space up as something that's functional now, but then also recognizing and acknowledging that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's a chance this is going to be redeveloped into something. So we wanted to elevate the space without investing all of the taxpayer time and money into it, knowing realistically it's probably not going to be this forever. That kind of was.
That was back when somebody wanted to buy the lot and make it a hotel. And I don't know how they would have done that if there was a requirement of keeping 100 spaces there.
Yeah, I don't know that
So-
people were aware of that document.
Yeah,
And that was
so-
from 2002, so that is not a new document. That's been there for 20 years.
Can we offer to buy the pier from Jacksonville?
We,
I'm
so
vision of Jacksonville on how the pier is run. So let's buy it and take control and eliminate this problem.
Actually, I don't have a problem with the parking space, I don't have a problem with the parking requirement. If it's a fishing pier, and if you wanna grab your cooler and your fishing rods, you don't wanna lug it out of the
Right.
parking garage. I don't wanna lug it out of the parking garage.
Do you need 100 spaces?
You may not need 100 spaces, but I think you need to have dedicated spaces for that pier, and I think right where they are is fine.
Well, then it goes back to where we're going to have, like, our boardwalk not being functional for people to utilize getting basic snacks and foods and stuff off the pier so their kids can go up and get an ice cream cone. Like this, we have a whole concept about this pier being a, I don't know, call it outdoor cafeteria, it's not the right word, but retail, foodie,
Yeah, food court.
like food court, European, whatever you wanna call it, food court type thing where people could go to a hut and go here and get there and their kids can safely go somewhere and get something and bring it back down. We don't have a boardwalk that provides anything like that anywhere. And that's why I was pushing for that to become a common used space, green space with that kind of stuff and moving just across the street, all those parking spaces to give that some life, because there's no way we can, unless we can control the boardwalk to give some more kind of required public use of needed food and drink. I don't know, I feel like at this point, I think this parking lot probably needs to be seriously addressed to city council and then give us the direction they want. I think we need to say, look, we can either go forward and try to see if the city will limit parking across the street and give some kind of special walkway straight to the ocean across the river, so we can cross First Street even, as a concession to that, or so we can make it a green space, or we need to move forward with staying with, we just don't wanna go to the city and get a change. I think we need an answer to that before we can do concepts. I mean, that's, what does city council wanna do? Do they wanna go to the city or not? I get what you're saying in some spaces, maybe some spaces with, my big issue back then was that we had this nice, beautiful landscape, space that could be utilized for so much more people than cars. And I thought the creativity of that should be used. But I didn't know that we had to stick to our instructions. I don't know, I just feel like the city council needs to tell us if they want to go to the city or not.
My gut says don't even mess with this until we get all those other bigger projects completed, because it's just gonna distract from Lake Plaza, but that's just my gut.
Well, the pier's gonna be done this year, so we have to do something, whether it's temporary or permanent.
But I hate spending a whole bunch of money on stuff and then 2 years later seeing it being torn up. It's like drives me crazy with sidewalks and stuff, absolutely drives me crazy.
Well, you can still take care of this area right here in front of the pier, that has nothing to do with the parking.
I agree with that, I would 100% do that in the whole section.
Or the only question I would have is, right now, the fence line, the construction fence line goes roughly up to here. This is all the pier construction area. The question is, what's being put back? What are they doing as part of the pier construction? Because this is pretty much torn up now. And how do we dovetail with that? You know, are they just putting the parking back in like it's, like it was?
I
Or,
have no idea, my guess would be they're putting the parking back as it was.
Yeah.
They're gonna put it back basically how it was before they started. And to kind of go to Taylor's point, and Cody, maybe you wanna jump in, the plans that Dick's Hyde has done for the pier parking lot, like Taylor said, really are enhanced landscaping, some hardscaping like rocks, and the piece of art. So it's not really, and some bike racks and, the fix-it station. So it's not reimagining the whole space, it's really improving what's already there. And like Taylor said, maybe it is temporary while you guys focus on Latham Plaza and the P3 project here, because there are some constraints around the pier, the biggest one really being that requirement for 100 spaces, and that might be something that never changes. So again, that's something council has to decide whether or not they want to deal with. I know that this has already gone pretty far down the road with DEP, if you want to give an update on that process for the pier, if you don't mind.
Of course, yeah, we've submitted for permit multiple times. We actually just this past week got some new comments. So it's always challenging when you go in and you get some comments and you address those comments and you go back in. Now we have some new comments, but
What was submitted?
fairly minor. So we submitted, so we've shared the plans, we've been at 100% for a while. And have been
So we've got drawings that are way beyond
We've,
this
you've
point.
got construction documents that are well beyond.
So I guess we need to see what our construction documents look like. Is it one of these two schemes that we're
It's the
showing?
second scheme,
It is the second. Okay.
and we walked through that.
During the site visit, when you guys came here,
Yeah.
yeah, we had it out on the
It's been a
table.
while, and I know there was comments around, the fire department reviewing it, so that they've done that, and
Yeah.
addressed their commentary.
And what does DEP have to approve?
Well, like, one of
We're
the,
not going,
but there's a coastal construction
It's
that's
still
on,
within post construction.
and that's actually in their comments right now, and a lot of it is just clarification.
So basically, we'll submit it to DEP, it's just this one little rectangle right here at the edge of here.
Well, but the construction documents actually extend all the way out to First.
And,
The
but
question I would have is, we talked about this a while back, is with the pier construction pretty much tearing up everything.
Yep.
Is there any opportunity to dovetail not build something, tear it out, and then come back and
Right.
build this? To your point, can we build this?
Yeah, and that's the hard part, since we don't know exactly when they're gonna vacate, and
Can all of that come together?
yeah, their agreement is to put everything back the way they found it, so,
Okay.
it's been difficult to kind of coordinate that, since we don't know exactly when they're gonna vacate the site, but,
Okay.
we've been talking internally about getting with City of Jacksonville to kind of start coordinating with that effort as they get closer to completion.
So if there's just a plan for enhancement at this point in time, if we can do the dovetailing with the City of Jacksonville, it sounds like that would be the appropriate way, from my perspective, to proceed right now. And then to turn around and spend some time, number one, getting direction from City Council as to how they would like us to deal with the parking lot and whether there's an option there or not. And then look at a possible further development and enhancement of the pier entry area at the appropriate point in time, letting us focus in the meantime on Latham Plaza and really getting that moving, but in the background, working on slowly moving the pier entry area forward. I think we could handle both of them fairly well. And it just means us staying focused and, making the decisions, giving Dick's Height the direction that they need, and getting it done. I think we could develop a schedule around all of that and make it work very well.
good.
We definitely need to know what's going on with the city if they ever want to move forward with that response, because we could do a thing at the Ritz parking lot if we have to keep that response. But if we can't move forward with that or the Ritz parking lot without knowing the answer to that.
Yep.
Just can't.
And as an option, could you convert a bunch of normal spots to like compact, so you can kind of squeeze out some
All
free
E,
space?
all E spots and motorcycle.
Look, we have, the data's gotta be there as far as, because you had to pay to get on the pier.
Right.
And who was
That's
on
how
the
it
pier, you know the max people that are ever on that pier. And if you want to, heck, you can probably get by with 20 spots, but you have to make it so you go and pay your entry to the pier, no matter if you're fishing or walking, you get a placard to put on your windshield for pier parking. It's designated pier parking, it's nobody else but pier parking. And, that's how you get from 100 spots down to 20 spots, or down to 50 spots. The day is there, you know the maximum parking spaces you're gonna need. So
We just
that,
have to see if city council wants to address it though. Like, we can't, those two lots hinge on that answer, I think. And I agree, it'd be nice if we could just do like a placard thing or a special parking pass.
I lived through the negotiation way back when we moved a pier there, so.
Well, if we do the,
But I know 100 spots was just arbitrary, it's just because nobody knew how active the pier was
Well,
gonna be.
So why did Jacksonville end up owning it?
Because George Forbes didn't want it up here.
Okay,
They have the money to do it too.
Yeah, and the money to maintain it.
We didn't have
and
the
things
money.
have changed.
And I hear this talk now that we wanna maintain the pier.
Might as well own it.
That's right, you gotta remember, back then when we built the pier, it was only $3.5 million. To fix the pier now is what, close to $8 million.
Well, and to clarify, what council's been discussing is actually management of like the pier office, if you will,
Yeah.
bait shop, just the management of that, not maintenance and management of the pier itself.
Take everything.
Yeah, just the, where you go pay and you get bait,
The
snacks.
administrative kind of side of things.
Right, not the pier itself, but that little bait
I mean,
shop.
you gotta remember, I mean, it's the county pier, and with that came the agreement of making sure there's parking spaces. Because what the fishermen didn't want, because they knew all these parking spaces were gonna be taken on any given summer, because, you know, everybody wants to be on the beach. And they're like, well, we need to be somewhere close, so we don't have to haul our equipment. And so that's where the destination came from. The 100 was an arbitrary number. And so you can,
It's still gonna be having the same problem with that, right? Because other people are using the space, there could be fishermen who come and can't use the space.
my understanding is you have to, only people that go into the pier use these spaces.
No.
No.
Anybody
Anybody
can
can
use
use it, anybody.
So we're violating the agreement right now.
Once that P3 partnership parking garage gets built, then all those people using it for normal, just beach,
That's true.
are parking down here, leaving, and then maybe at that point you could say, hey, we only need to commit 60 spaces to fishing.
Well, I mean, and that's why you can figure that out, especially if the Jack's Beach is gonna take over the operation of that building, which is also the operation of that gate, letting people in and out. You can make it, like I said, you know, put signs up by permit only, and they have like a little placard that goes on the dashboard.
That would be a great addition.
And so then it's absolutely the people that pay to get on the pier are the ones that park there.
It's a great addition. Yeah. Because the city's not doing that right now. And those spaces are filled with
Anyway.
anyone.
But you also gotta remember, people going out there fishing going out at 6 o'clock in the morning, not at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
No, I park in there to go to the restaurants. So,
Cody, how do you, in the construction documents that you have for the pier, how do we treat the edge along what will be, Spring Hill Suites?
The southern edge. there.
Well, it would, in this case,
The
it
northern
would be
edge.
it would be the northern edge.
Well, northern edge of the hotel.
Yeah.
But we actually have, we've got the construction documents of the hotel itself.
Okay,
Because there's
great.
some doorways along that edge, and we actually coordinated with those construction documents. Which refined, you know, based on the ideas you gave, so we coordinated.
You know, the only thing I would say, and unfortunately, we didn't do this when the building was designed, but because all of that is just parking on that lower level, you know, like the grade level. But it'd be nice if there was some kind of concession areas or the ability to have some concession spaces along there for those people coming off the pier. They want to stop and get soda or ice cream or something like that. There's some small little concession areas there.
I will say it's really tight, you know, and it's tight. And it would have been better, just like we had the conversation of Latham, of how that development engages really important space. I don't think they didn't engage the pier entry as successfully as.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So lesson learned, and you know, as we work on Latham, that's something we consider, but it is very tight, and even I think the transformer sits in that zone somewhere, so we have to work around.
You know, you got you've got the dumpster, or those are further over, they're a little bit further north. But
Those are being relocated.
Aesthetically, yeah, we are relocating the dumpsters.
Oh, you are.
Aesthetically, the hotel works pretty well, and we have trees along that edge, it's just really focused on pedestrian circulation. We're really trying to enhance the pedestrian.
It would have been nice if it was kind of incorporated into the building, where there'd be little retail spaces along there, but, so, it'd just be something to activate that long walk down through there before you even get to the real pier entry. Kind of takes me back to, you know, looking at what the original vision plan drawing showed. It seemed to activate all of Fourth Street, you know, pretty much, this probably just shows it from, maybe Second Street or First Street, something like that.
Well, the base of that hotel's supposed to be retail, right?
But who's all your kids then, is this a hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a little 600.
So this is the latest set of plans here. We're pretty close to it. It's,
Trying to find that section really, adjacent to the Spring Hill Suites. So it's very slow to
that could work, yeah. That's the civils plan, but
just how long
I'm
have
sorry.
you
more prominence on the pedestrian access into the space rather than crossing so much
Yeah.
traffic. We also saw that the spaces right now that are kind of in, right there where you enter, the spaces aren't defined very well, so they're not very effective, not very efficient in their use, so. There's some efficiencies gained here, and I think what I'm hearing is some of the desires for like the west, essentially the parking area you see. I don't think there's gonna be a lot of demo or abortive work done if there's a desire to do something different than parking lot. So I think it could all work out together.
I really like how you're eliminating two traffic exits, because, you know, when you're walking up, there's lots of cars popping in and out, so I like moving that to just one, and I like this a lot.
I actually agree. Okay, so what do you need from us on this, Stephanie?
Well, at this point, it seems like we've got some more homework to take back to this. So rather than coming to consensus on anything, as it pertains to that, we will do our homework as far as council goes and the arbitrary number of spots that were there. And do they have any desire to reach out to the city of Jacksonville